Seth, a mysterious young man who's a pure descendant of the Nightblade. Someone that shows no emotion and is serious the majority of the time. He is an assassin that always gets the job done. He is the sole wielder of the weapons known as the Eliminators. Ancient purification weapons that share similar properties to Hyde's weapon, the Insulator, but has the opposite effect in comparison. It's not said exactly what the abilities are though. All we know as of now is that it doesn't hold the same effects as the Insulator. The Insulator being able to strip one's entire EX in their body and turning them back to normal without causing severe wounds. A case you may be familiar with is with Waldstein and his war against the Nightblade and their leader at the time, Kuon. Coming off as a cold individual, Seth is a very deadly person, but he also dislikes his family's history, even going so far as saying the sin of their past has him chained to this day. The reason being, as the successor who protected the laws of the night, he must venture into every night to slay the voids that would appear. And doing so, he usually ends up questioning why he must continue this duty. It was an impossible task. If his mission was to eliminate all the voids, they would have been wiped out long ago. But even with these thoughts, he continues his mission. Due to his ties, he is bound to such matters. One reason was to minimize as much casualties as possible, and that was from his own free will. But the other reason, the reason why he swings his blades to begin with, was for repentance. Due to the Nightblade's history, he feels he has sinned and needs to be absolved. The moment in particular was when members of the Nightblade long ago faced off against one another with their newfound powers, which left many of their brothers and sisters dead. With all of this though, knowing the history of those bound to immortality with the knowledge of the past, his fate as part of the Nightblade desires to meet those of legend, the Weaver of Eternity and the Princess of the Nightblade. Thinking to himself maybe meeting them could be a way to escape his circumstances. One night, as he began to walk out of a night, he sensed that he was being followed. Thinking to end his pursuer now, but decides to hide and mask his EX, so the pursuer would walk by unknowingly. And the person did, and who Seth was introduced to was a man in glasses. The man quickly started shouting in the area, saying sorry for what he was doing and that he wished to have a sincere talk. Following this, he raised up both arms and showed his empty hands. Seth didn't trust the situation, but sensed no animosity from the man, and at this point, his curiosity was getting the better of him. The night was a bit boring too, and he was curious what fangs the man was hiding. So, he walked out of the shadows and finally showed himself. The one following was Chaos, and during their introduction, he also mentioned that he was part of Amnesia. Seth asked what would someone that's an enemy of the Nightblade want with him. Chaos cut to the chase, but he wanted to clarify at the moment he's not a member of Amnesia, but instead is in an alliance with someone that Seth knows very well, but he couldn't say who his employer was. Seth at this point deduced the possibilities. Chaos knew he was part of the Nightblade, but if so, who was he aligned with? Chaos continued, saying how he came to Seth because he knew how strong he was, and that he knows that there's been a lot of inbursts as of late which has become somewhat of a nuisance. All he was asking was not to join Amnesia exactly, but instead only listen to his orders. As for the orders, it was to simply remove those in Amnesia's way. Seth questioned why though, and Chaos gave off the reasons. 1. There aren't many good wielders to pick from. 2. Even if there was, most aren't the type to listen. And 3. A certain someone asked for him in particular. Seth slowly began to understand why he chose him now, and allowed Chaos to continue. If this is a negotiation, then surely there was something in it for him. Chaos was glad he started to understand, and reassured him that there was something for him. Something that he would accept. At least, that's what he was told would happen. Chaos pulled out a small package. He didn't know exactly what was in it, as that information wasn't shared. He was just ordered to give it to Seth. His employer also stated that it would be fine if Seth just ran away with it. After all, the goal of giving the package would still be accomplished. Seth was cautious about this package. After all, it was given to him by a mere stranger. But for some reason, the box was letting out a vague amount of EX. He opened it, and what was in it caught him by surprise. He was introduced to two short blades that let out a cold, sharp, still aura. He knew what these blades were. Chaos glances over to see what he was carrying the entire night, asking if those were some kind of ritual blades. And to an extent, he was right. With this though, he now had an idea to who gave Chaos the package, and why that person gave them to him. He then also agreed to be Chaos's assassin. He didn't like the idea of following his orders, but still vowed to follow his orders like a faithful dog until the time comes. They exchanged numbers, but Chaos added to the deal, basically saying not to necessarily kill the ones he's ordered to take down. Seth understood this, and said that he'll break their vessel and just destroy their will to fight. Amnesia now had a weapon that'll make people fear them even more. It'll make people scared of the idea that something may be lurking in the shadows. But of course, Seth was ordered not to mention Amnesia's name in anything, and to even keep this meeting a secret. They both depart soon after. Seth then gazes at the blades that were given to him. These weapons were known as the Eliminators, one of the ancient legendary purification weapons. He says to himself that he can finally sever the ancient chain that binds the Nightblade. He questions how and why he had these in his hands now, even stating that these were even kept away from superiors of the Nightblade. Someone knew of these weapons' importance, but again, he questioned why is it in his hands. He then made his decision. This may make Seth seem like a cold person, but deep down, he's not as cold as you think, and it's all thanks to a certain interaction in his past. During a young age within the Nightblade, you begin training, and in Seth's case, his body at the time was already becoming that of an inbirth. And they learned the very history of the group, the split between power, why it happened, why it was formed to begin with, and so on. A young Seth at the time was fine with all of this, since this is part of family tradition, but nothing really interested him as much as the story of the princess of the Nightblade. He always said every time he heard the story, his heart would beat fast. He always heard the tale regarding the princess of the Nightblade and thought that it was sad. So he says to himself, something of a personal promise, that he'll save her. He wanted to save her, support her with his own hands, change her, and that someday, when he's older, he'll do just that. One night, he left his room and headed towards a field nearby because he really couldn't sleep. Greeted by a huge, beautiful moon lighting the surroundings, he thought he'll be able to sleep out here. He lays down, saying how one day the princess may just visit, so he'll need to get stronger. He started thinking how maybe if he could run a lot, it'll help with his speed, but his body and power was still small at the time. Even he admitted that he hadn't won against another child of his age, nor an old man with sumo. So the only thing he can do now was to train to be faster. A few moments passed, and a gust of wind blew by. But with it, he saw a shadow of a person in the distance. It was a girl, and Seth got up and walked towards her. The girl's name was Chitose. Seth asked if she was part of the Nightblade, but she said it was a bit difficult to answer, and just told him she was just affiliated with them. He asked what she was doing here too, and she simply said she was waiting here for someone to end her. The young Seth was confused, but Chitose said it was simply adult matters. She then tells him to go back home and rest up, but he tells her he couldn't do that because his heart starts to beat fast. She asks why. His response was that he wanted to become stronger. He wanted to protect the princess of the Nightblade because he heard that she was captured and being held by chains. And when he thinks about it, he can't sleep. He doesn't know what to do. Hearing this, Chitose went quiet, but she basically reassured him that if the princess was here right now to hear that, she'd be happy that she'd cry. She then asked another question. If she was the princess right now, what would he do? Seth simply said that he'd take her and run away. She giggled a bit, and asked where exactly would they go. And he said to his house, and that his mom will help too. She then says he lacks power, and that he's still a child. So she gave him some advice. Eat well, study hard, get bigger and stronger, and not take strange things home and trouble your mother. As for his father, he should try to defeat him. Seth continuously nodding at the advices given, but this came to an end quickly, as Chitose told him she needed to leave. Seth telling her that if she was a princess though, he wouldn't take her home. She quickly smacks his head and tells him he should have lied and said that he would. With this though, there was a sudden pause in the moment, and Chitose's sadness deepened and began to show. She begins stating that very soon, the princess's life will come to an end, and her soul will transfer into another body, as the legends go. Seth knew of the legend and said that's what he wants to save her from. She follows up to this saying in a faint but heavy voice that she wishes someone would save her, saying that it hurts. The seal of the night that's been branded. It's been a burden for so long, now it's tiring. As soon as she said those words though, she quickly tried to change the mood, and said she was just kidding, that she just wanted to complain. The young Seth was confused, but can tell when she was being honest with her feelings or talking lightly. He then says that if it's true, he doesn't want the princess to die, and whether she likes it or not, he wants to carry that burden instead. He knows he's small, but given time, he says to her that he'll train to become stronger. He'll run a lot to become faster, and so on, but then asks her if that's enough. She replies saying how there's a document that has the answer to that, but it doesn't exist in this world. That no matter the path he takes, that there is no guarantee there will be a correct answer, and that's why no one can answer that question, saying that he has to find it instead, and be content with it, and just do it as it comes. Then she begins to leave, saying how the Nightblade will come to defeat the princess soon, but Seth asks why again. She says cause they were gonna use a purification weapon, to see if the seal of the night will come off. This was the first time he heard of purification weapons. Seth couldn't grasp what it is, or what it does really, so Chitose simplified it, saying how it basically is a way to sever sins, even saying how it's basically a can opener. She continues, saying how you really can't open the can with just the can opener's power. In order to lift this powerful curse, there are infinite conditions. It's not okay with just having the weapon of pardon. You need the power to match it. With that, she begins to leave. He shouts to her to not go, but she had to. She even said thanks for the good memories up until the end. She also says that he couldn't save her this time, but who knows about the next time. She tells him to save her. The next princess, that is. He shouted to her again, saying, "You're the real princess, aren't you?" But she simply said no. She says she was a fake. As he watched her walk away, another shadow emerged, but it was huge. He mistook it as just a boulder, but it was another person. The princess and a huge monster-like person then leaves. Seth was told through stories from his grandfather that the princess was aided by a giant in all of her reincarnations. Seth finally met the princess of the Nightblade at long last. And now with the Eliminators in his hands, and after 10 years, he's finally ready to fulfill his promise. The Princess of the Nightblade. She has no reason to avoid him, but also had no reason to visit him. But deep down, Seth wished that she visited, for her to come after 10 years to tell him to fulfill the promise that was made. He heard rumors that the princess was headed far east. She was finally moving towards him. He waited for this day for so long, and now with the Eliminators in his hands, he's ready to accept her burdens as his own, and vows to finally save her.